Just take a couple of breaths just to arrive. And we just start with just noticing how our body, mind, and heart are just in this moment. So just doing a little light scan, noticing, oh, the day's kind of shown up like this. You might be relaxed and at ease, or stressed, or maybe dealing with some pain. And we just hold a gentle attitude with this. Just conditions are such at the moment. They always change. And I invite you this evening to go ahead and put away any stories you have about how you are in this moment or how your day has been. We could say that we just leave our stories outside the door. Just put them over there. You can always pick them up later if you like. And just noticing what that's like if you just take all the stories and put them outside the door for right now. You may notice that there's a little more ease or some softness comes. Just taking a moment to notice, who are you or how are you without your stories? I just let them go for a moment. Oh, it's like this. If stories start up again, just gently put them outside the door, just over there for now. And just taking a moment to notice how your mind feels without stories. You don't have to think about that, but just notice how it is. You may feel quieter or more spacious. Or there may be some relief. And taking a moment to notice how your body is with no stories. Just allowing there to be sensations, energy. And what if there's just sensations and tingling, heat, but there's no story about it? Just allowing the body to flow and do its thing. And there doesn't have to be a problem. And we can do the same with our heart. Just noticing any emotions, can be neutral. There may be joy, grief. And what's it like if you just allow it and don't tell a story about it? Just let it be there. Just let lightness be there or heaviness be there. And no story, just simply allowing. And take a moment to just notice the ease that's here when there's no story. I don't have to know anything, fix anything. There's a certain kind of ease. You can let yourself rest in that ease. Or if you like, just breathe into that ease, allowing it to just get as big as it wants. Just letting the ease come into focus. There's no special size. We just allow it. And it can be as if ease is breathing. And just letting go into this ease. This is our essential nature, the quiet behind all the stories. Without the busy of stories, we are peaceful and at ease. Resting in our natural mind. Anytime stories arise, just simply put them outside the door again. And notice what's left. Resting in the peace and ease of our natural mind. Hmm. Just enjoying that peace and ease for a moment. So, last week we had talked about kind of the difficulties that we see in the world and, what does it take to heal the world? And one of the things we talked about was it's not systems that are going to fix the world, it's when humans fix their mind, right? When humans come back to their natural self. And when we're in touch with our essential nature, we exhibit what are called, or what I like to call the success traits. These traits, these natural traits of, um, like integrity and wisdom, some of the things that we all named last week. And when we're sitting in that seat, then the way we approach the world is very different than when we approach it from our ordinary mind, where there's grasping and there's fear and there's bitterness and old, wounds and things like that. So how do we get ourselves there? How do we become a person who actually lives in these traits, who becomes someone who manifests our essential nature more and more? And one of the ways that people do it is they like to try to take some of those traits and try to cultivate them. So, for instance, they may take a trait like generosity and say, okay, I'm going to try to practice being more generous. Or I'm going to try to have integrity in all that I do. Or I'm going to be courageous, or compassionate. And so a lot of people try to cultivate those traits that way. Um, but, and that may work for some. I think it works for some people and it's a beautiful practice. But for a lot of people, it doesn't tend to stick. A lot of people have more of that. It's almost like going on a diet and falling off the wagon, 3 weeks into it kind of thing. It's like you start off trying to be more generous or trying to be more compassionate or, I'm going to be a good listener. And a week later, you realize you're not doing it. This happens a lot with our intentions at New Year's, right? This is why this year at New Year's, I brought in this idea that maybe this year we didn't make an intention of trying to improve ourselves, but we did instead restorative intentions. Intentions that we can pick up when we drop them and keep going and just keep, so I'm going to try to get outside this year. I'm going to try to be kind to my body. And when I'm not, I can pick that back up. In my own practice and working with a lot of people, what I found is that oftentimes it's hard to cultivate that way because there are obscurations in the way. So it's kind of like, if you go on a diet and lose weight, there's that point where something gets uncomfortable and then you start eating again. And so I find that it's hard to get down to our essential nature by trying to embody it all the time or be good. I find that I do a lot better when I work with the obscurations and I clear them away. When I clear them away, there's nothing left but essential nature. And that was a little bit of what we practiced tonight with our sit. So rather than trying to be in our essential nature, all I did was cue you to let go of the stories. Let go of the stories you're carrying, the stress you're carrying. Put it outside the door for a moment. And by doing that, you get to see, well, what's left over? Oh, well, there's peace and ease right here. And that's the beauty, is that our essential nature is right there. Essence is right there in the background. So if we can clear the obscurations away, then it's the more we clear, the easier it is to access it, the more it's just here on a daily basis. And I find that that works pretty well. So I wanted to talk tonight, given that last week we talked about, okay, we have these success traits. We have these traits we'd love to be able to have. How do we get there? How do we do that? So tonight I just wanted to talk about just a short model that you can use for starting to get curious about and clearing your own obscurations. And, in a lot of ways, what I'm doing is just kind of starting to move us into moving. We've named all the parts so far. So we've talked about the domains. We have 7 domains of functioning. We've talked about essence. And what I'm doing is just starting to bring all that together. So how do we work on ourself? Because each one of us is individual. How do we work on ourself to clear our own unique obscurations? Yeah. So staying with the theme of stories tonight, we talked about meanings a few weeks back. So we'll just stay with that theme a little bit tonight. So an easy way to do this is to first notice the problem. So I use this anytime I'm suffering, anytime I'm stuck. What's the problem? I just name the problem to myself. Okay, I'm not happy with this. I'm not doing that. I'm not eating the way I want, whatever it might be. This is the problem. Secondly, what we do then is look for what is the story attached to this problem. This is where we get into the meanings that we're carrying. The reason we're in some kind of reactivity is because of the meanings we're carrying. In a lot of ways, our problems are really just reflections of our own mind. And some of you may be thinking, well, wait a minute. No. There's real problems out in the world. They're out there. I see them all the time on the news. And it's true. There are real problems in the world. But those problems are actually reflections of our mind. So when we are selfish or greedy, or we don't care about our neighbor, or we don't do our part to kind of make the world a better place, what we're seeing in the world is actually the reflections of what happens to the world when our mind is in pain, or selfish, or bitter, or hungry and greedy. And so the best way for us to deal with the problems in the world is to deal with our mind about them. And that's both how we might contribute to them. And the second way is how we approach wanting to fix it, wanting to help. So, for instance, when I work with people who do social justice work, sometimes they'll have a lot of anger, like, well, I'm just mad at the bad guys, and I'm here to be a good guy. And it's like, yeah, that kind of mindset isn't actually going to help. What helps is when we're in our own essence and we can look at everybody as if they belong. We can work with people. We can try to change systems that way, as opposed to, well, we're just going to, lock everybody up. I'll just make that up. So what I'm pointing to is what I was talking about last week, which is shifting our own mind. So we begin with the problem in ourselves. It could be something like, I'm mad at those people. I don't like those people. I don't like what they did in Washington this week. Something like that. Once you have the problem, the very next step is look at the story you're carrying. What's the meaning you're making? If this is true, if this is my problem, what does that mean? What does that mean? So if I don't like what they're doing in Washington, it means they're going to destroy the world. That meaning right there is where your reactivity is. If it means they're going to destroy the world, of course you're going to get very upset. Nobody wants to see the world destroyed. So we have our problem, we have our meaning. And then what we talked about a few weeks ago was that our meanings are all based on formations in our own mind, memories in our own mind, old pain, things that we know about, things that we've lived through. It's like If you've lived through hunger, you're going to have a lot of reactions about hunger. If you've lived through abuse, you're going to have a lot of reactions about abuse. And so once we have our problem and we have our story, what does this mean? Well, it means this. The next thing we want to do is go in a little deeper and find out what's the formation that is driving me right now. So there's two ways we can do it. One is a shortcut. And this is just all we're doing is an inquiry practice at this point. We're just turning inward to ourselves to do an inquiry practice. So an easy way to say it is, where do I know about this from? Or do I have a memory about this? Or where have I lived through this? So you can ask that question. So, if we're going to use Washington and they're destroying the world, we'll just use that one. Where do I know about worlds being destroyed or nobody caring about the world? And right there, you might have a memory. You might have something like, oh, that reminds me of the time. That reminds me of the time that, so-and-so in my past didn't care about. All of a sudden, it's starting to get a little personal. Now you have the charge where this is coming from. If you don't have a memory, and you can't do it just by asking a question, then we turn towards our body. And we've talked about this, how to find formations, how to find that inner child or that inner teenager who's having a hard time. And so the way we do that is just that little step where we go into the body. So let's say they're going to destroy the world. It means they're going to destroy the world. Where do you feel that in your body? Oh, I feel this big contraction in my chest right now. Good. Go right there. Go right there. Now, if that contraction could talk, what would it say? I'm scared. I'm so sad. What if the world dies? And then we ask, how old does that feel? How old does that feel? That little one. And it might feel 5, and it might feel 15, it might feel 25. But that gets us closer. Oh, I feel like a little kid. Okay, so this is really tender. This is really personal. And then we ask, is this little one standing anywhere in particular? And that opens usually the memory. And so it may be, yeah, I'm standing in the schoolyard, and I'll just make this up. I'm standing in the schoolyard and there's a little bird who's dead or dying, and kids are kicking it in the schoolyard. They don't care about the world. And there comes the charge. Now it's personal. Now I see why I care so much about the world. I have this memory of when it was so rich, so painful, so real for me. Now I understand why I'm so upset at those people in Washington. Because they remind me of people who don't care. And this is really important because we don't realize that as we go through our day, we're moved all day long by these inner charges. And they are not our essential nature. They're old painful memories, protective memories. Right? So once we have the source of our problem, this is the root. This is what I call the root formation. This is where the hot charge is coming from. Then we have a couple of choices of what we do with it. How do we care for ourselves when we see how tender it is? The things that have moved us, the things that pain us or our suffering, the root of our suffering. So there's a couple of things we can do. Right there, if we just, we're with it, we're with the pain. Right there, we might want to bring in some loving kindness. So you're sitting there, I'm just making this up, with this little, 7-year-old who's in the schoolyard where the bird got kicked, and, they want to sob. They're crying. You might even be crying. Right there, you can do loving kindness. May you be filled with loving kindness, little one. May you be peaceful and at ease. Or may I be filled with loving kindness. May I be peaceful and at ease. I am just suffering, remembering the pain of this little bird. May I be well and healthy and safe. And so we do the loving kindness practices right there, soothing and calming down this painful activation, right? So that's one way we might handle it. Another way is to work with the energy that's there. So we may, we've done this before together, where you sit with the energy and let it flow out of you. Don't hold on to the pain. Let it start to bubble off your body. If it cycles in your body and you're clinging to it, holding to it, you're just grasping for suffering here. It's okay that the pain is here. What happens if you start to just let it bubble out of your body? It may rise off as heat. You might feel energy tingling. Sometimes it helps. Oftentimes I'll say, imagine with this pain that you're sitting in a big river valley or someplace natural with a big sky that feels safe. So whatever a safe place is that gives you more room for this pain. When we hold the pain in a small place, I talk about water running through a slot canyon, it goes up 15 feet. It feels like you're drowning. But if you take that same amount of energy, that same amount of pain, and open it up to a big river valley, well, now it drops down to like inches. Same amount of energy, but you're spreading it in a wider space. And a lot of people say, oh, that feels a lot better. Now I can be with this pain. It's not choking me. It's not overwhelming me. It's not too big. And so we either take this pain and do loving kindness, or we take this pain and we give it more room, letting the energy come off our body, letting the heat come off our body. As we're sitting in a wide open place, you can imagine a meadow, a beach, your favorite place on the planet. And we're just allowing, okay, this pain is here, and we feel the tenderness of it. We're being with it in a way that isn't overwhelming right now. But this is still suffering. This is still suffering, right? So there are two more things we can do. One is where we let the pain be in the front of our body, and we take a step back. Take a step back into the quiet that's in the background. And we notice, oh, there's some quiet in the background. All we're doing is moving from the story, just moving into the background. And right there we can feel often some peace and ease, some quiet. And we start breathing into that quiet. We let ourselves become it for a moment. And by doing that, we open our essence, which is always here in the background. We're just bringing it into focus now. And so we step back and we can be in essence. And then from essence, now we can go ahead and look at that painful scene. So we're sitting in the peace and ease and the quiet, And we may ask ourselves, is essence 7 years old? Most people say, no, it doesn't have an age. Is essence crying or in deep pain right now? No, essence is okay. And we can see that the deepest part of us is actually okay. And right there, we may look upon that memory from essence now, from our essential nature, and we may see it completely differently. We may have deep wisdom. We may have deep compassion. We realize we're not dying. We're in the space now where we're not dying. And that allows us to see both that memory, but also those people in Washington. We can see them from a different perspective. Now we're in the field of those success traits. Now we're in the field of those success traits, where there's wisdom, compassion, integrity, seeing the big picture, discernment, clear thinking. Now we're in that zone. This is where a new shift can happen, where we realize we're more free than we realized we were before. We're safe, we're okay. It's so wonderful to discover this part, this experience, because this is where we start to let go of our pain and suffering and our identification with it. And we start to realize, oh, there's something I can do. I can always step back and take this seat. And there is no suffering here. There is no suffering. And without suffering, I'm able to negotiate the world from a very, very different place with a very different attitude. It's quite wonderful. But even with essence, we still have this pain in the front of our body. We have the perspective of essence, but if that pain is big enough, it's hard to stay in connection with essence. Oftentimes we can be in connection, and when the pain gets big enough, we're pulled forward back into it. The story starts again and we're pulled back into it. So one of the things, the last step that we can do is release the formation. Literally release this little one, this past one, this memory out of the body, out of our system. And when we do that, when we release that energy out of our body and that little one leaves, all that's left is essence. It's as if the story and the pain and the obscuration is now cleared. And all that's left is this peaceful ease that was always there in the background. And we can breathe into it and embody it and become it. And now there's a very different mind. Now that mind can look at what they're doing in Washington or whatever our problem was. And we see it from a completely different perspective. Now we're in touch with these success traits. And so I'll just read some of these. These are your words that you came up with last week. But these are qualities of this essential nature. It's non-reactive, a good listener, has a long perspective or sees the big picture, is compassionate, non-judgmental, but it has discernment and wisdom. It sees things clearly as they truly are. It's balanced in both its masculine and feminine perspective. It has awareness and presence. It's honest, generous, and has appreciation and is accepting. So when we're sitting in this seat, now we are the one who can wisely navigate the world. Now we are the one who is so clear in the purity of our natural mind that we're not adding to the pain of the world. We're not running in with our swords, cutting off heads and saying, we stopped the bad guys. It's like, that didn't help. That just pissed somebody else off or hurt somebody else. Instead, we come with a much broader attitude, much more inclusive. And now we're part of the solution. Because we took care of our own pain and our own reactivity, and we tapped into our deepest wisdom, and now we can go forward with a lightness of heart, even joy, playfulness, love, compassion for all, looking for a bigger solution than just a reactive solution. So here, I'll just read a couple of quotes. I love it. This is from Dogen, who was a teacher in the 1100s. So, this wisdom has been around for a long time. And he said, cease from practice based on intellectual understanding or pursuing words, which are stories, right? Following after speech. And instead, he says, learn the backward step that turns your light and awareness inward to illuminate yourself. This is the answer. I love that. From the 1100s, take that backward step. Step back into the quiet so that you turn and illuminate yourself. Oh, this is why I'm reacting. It's because you remind me of my brother, right? And clear that away. This is from Marcus Aurelius. Again, Marcus Aurelius lived in 170 AD, long time ago. And he says, the first rule is to keep the untroubled spirit. I love that, to find the untroubled spirit. The second is then look things in the face and know them for what they are. So here's Marcus Aurelius coming across the century saying, find that untroubled space and then look it straight in the eye from that untroubled space, not from your reactivity. And know it and see them for what they are. See it with wisdom, compassion. You'll have a much better answer. And I love this from Jean-Paul Sartre. I fix nothing. I let it go. Just letting go of those stories. I let go of those stories. I don't have to fix it. I still work with it, but I'm coming at it from love and compassion now, not crushing it. So if you're unsure about this essence stuff. There's a couple of recordings you can go back on the website, maureenfallon-cyr.com, and there's some particular talks I've done on essence. There's also on that website a class that I did, which introduced essence. It was called Discover Your True Nature. And so there's a link on the website, and you can go take that class. It's an online class at this point, and you can just take an online class and just facilitate your own relationship with your own essential nature. It becomes your refuge. It becomes your go-to place. It becomes your wisdom. It's a wonderful way to approach life when you don't know what to do, to take that step back. It's a beautiful way to negotiate the world, not from your knowing intellectual mind, but from a more integrative aspect. It's mind, body, and heart all integrated. Yeah, so we'll go ahead and we'll focus on release work for April and just taking different aspects of how to play with that. And I'm sorry it's not a class. I think, when we get to do a deep class, we have more time to practice and we get to embody it more, but at least I'm kind of dribbling it out for you guys and giving you the work that you can start to practice with. So, well, maybe I'll end here with a quote. Where we're headed is freedom. That's what essence is. It's the freedom to feel safe. You feel so safe that you are free to be true to yourself, to be authentic, to be what I think it was Teresa last week called our true nature, right? You're free to love. You're free to play. You're free to be in your body again. It's wonderful when we clear these obscurations and old pain. So here's a quote. True freedom arises when you do not want anything from anyone else, and you are in a fearless state, and you are at peace with yourself and all beings. This is the beautiful gift that you will then bring to the world by letting go of your addiction to your own pain, your own stories. Yeah, I love that. So it's not only that you have the freedom, but then when you're free of your stories, you have so much joy and light that you are a beacon of freedom. And people start going, wow, you look younger. Did you color your hair? Did you lose weight? You look happier. I don't know what happened. Did you lose a bad partner? I don't know. it's like, well, I kind of did, but they were all in my own head, right? I lost all the painful stories that I was dragging around that were so heavy because essence is like, yeah, no, I'm okay with this. I got this. So I hope this is of some support to your practice and inspiring for you. Let's go ahead and just take a moment for a mindful intention to just share what we're cultivating here so that it's not just ours, but it's everyone's. So you can close your eyes for a moment. And just this moment of holding in our heart that we are cultivating freedom and joy and aliveness. We're learning a new way to release our pain and obscuration so that our essential nature shines through. It becomes a way of life. It becomes our wisdom for living in the world. And that it bubbles out beyond our life to those we know and don't know. And that this idea of essence and clearing our obscurations catches fire and becomes the norm. And that we come to our own and the world's healing. If we can all get to our essential nature, I think we can turn it around pretty beautifully. So thanks, everybody. I hope you have a lovely week. So remember, it's problem, story, or meaning. What's the formation? There's a memory in here somewhere that's charging you up. And then some loving kindness to that, or being in essence. You can even breathe that essence into that little one. And then we'll talk about release in April. So hope you guys have a lovely week.